Jonas Hale stopped by the Carter Ranch to look at a Morgan horse that was being offered at a low price. But the moment he stepped into the dark stable, a sound made him freeze. It was the choking sob of someone dying. Jonas placed his hand on the grip of his gun and moved slowly toward the sound. Dust and straw fell from the ceiling as he pushed open the final door. And in that very instant, his heart felt like it stopped beating. Miriam Carter was hanging upside down from a wooden beam. Her body covered in bruises from her shoulders to her hips. Her hands were swollen from being tied too tightly for too long. The skin on her thighs and sides was marked with lashes and rope burns, cruel signs too unmistakable to be anything else. Her body trembled violently, and her legs were spread in a way that spoke of unbearable pain. As if she had been pushed past her breaking point. When Jonas cut the ropes, Miriam collapsed into his arms, gasping like someone who had just escaped from hell. She clung to his shirt, her voice cracked and broken. "Please, he has been abusing me for months, beating me, torturing me, and doing vile things. It hurts so much. I cannot close my legs. Please get me out of here." Jonas clenched his jaw, his gray eyes turning cold, like steel in a storm. He spoke softly but firmly, more like a vow than a reply. "My name is Jonas. I am getting you out of here today, right now. And I swear you will never return to this place again." Jonas lifted Miriam the way one might carry someone who had just fallen off a cliff. Her body felt unnaturally light, the kind of lightness that comes when all strength has been drained. When months of pain have wrung a person dry, the evening sun lit up the bruises along her calves and arms, revealing the cold, dark purple of cruelty. He placed her gently onto the saddle and took off his coat, draping it over her trembling body. "Hold on to me," he said softly. Miriam gripped the collar of his shirt like she was holding on to her last chance at life. Jonas looked straight ahead toward the gate of the Carter Ranch where the ground was cracked beneath the brutal sun and where he knew the next terrible thing was waiting. He had just placed his foot in the stirrup when a voice tore through the air from the main house, screaming hoarse and furious. "Miriam, bring my wife back here." Travis Carter burst out from the porch like a rabid beast. His eyes were bloodshot and his hair clung to his scalp, soaked in sweat and whiskey. As he ran, he pointed at Jonas and howled, "You bastard! That woman is mine. Do you hear me? She is mine." Jonas turned his horse around, his gaze sharpening with an uncanny calm. The evening wind flared open his coat, stirring the dust into a thin mist-like veil. Jonas did not yell. He simply spoke. Low and sharp like a blade. "Not today. And you will never lay a hand on her again." Travis roared and lunged forward. He grabbed the reins, trying to yank Miriam off the horse. She screamed, clutching Jonas tighter. Jonas jumped off the horse. The first punch landed square on Travis's jaw, knocking him to the ground. But Travis got up immediately and came at him again like a mad wolf. The two men wrestled in the thick dust, each punch landing with a brutal, hollow thud. Miriam sobbed, trying to slide off the saddle, but her body was too weak. Jonas blocked a strike, turned, and drove a punch into Travis's stomach. Travis buckled, but still tried to rise, still reaching for Miriam, until Jonas grabbed him by the shirt, slammed him into the dirt, and spoke each word like the swing of a hammer. "If you ever come near her again bringing a preacher in your last words," and why Travis let out a snarl from deep in his throat, but his eyes held no surrender. Jonas turned back, lifted Miriam onto the horse once more. She wept into his shoulder, her sobs raw and jagged like a soul being pulled back from death. He whispered, "Hold on to me, Miriam. We are leaving now." Under a blood-red sunset, Jonas rode away from the Carter Ranch, leaving behind a hell she had endured for far too long. The Kansas evening wind swept across the long dirt road leading away from the Carter Ranch, lifting trails of red dust behind Jonas's horse. Miriam clung tightly to his back, her breath shaky and uneven, as if every inhale carried a memory of pain. Jonas held the residential with one hand, the other resting behind her, ready to catch her if she faltered. But they had not gone far when the sound of dragging footsteps echoed from behind. Jonas turned. Travis Carter, his mouth still smeared with blood and his body covered in dust, came charging after them like a madman. He screamed, "Stop! You cannot take that woman. She belongs to me, Jonas." "To me." Jonas stopped the horse and turned to face him. He knew one thing for certain. If this did not end right here, right now, Miriam would never find peace. He gently lowered Miriam under the shade of a tree and looked her in the eyes. "It is all right. I am right here." Then Jonas stepped into the middle of the road. Travis roared, lunging like a raging bull. Jonas dodged the first charge, turned and punched him square in the chest. Travis staggered but did not fall. Liquor and madness gave him unnatural strength. He grabbed Jonas by the collar, yelling right into his face. "Do you know how long she has been my wife? I can do whatever I want to her. My house. My rules." Jonas gripped Travis's wrist, squeezing until the joints cracked under pressure. "Miriam is not your property. She is not an object. She is not an animal. And starting now, she is not your wife anymore." Travis growled like a beast and swung his fist. The two men fought in the middle of the dusty road. The sound of fists meeting flesh echoed heavy and hard from beneath the tree. Miriam watched in trembling silence, wanting to scream, but the cry stuck in her throat. Travis lunged again, trying to throw his full weight on Jonas, but Jonas spun, slammed him to the ground, and pressed his knee into his chest. Leaning down, Jonas spoke with the force of iron in every word. "I will say this one more time. If you want to keep living, do not come near her again." Travis glared up at him, hatred burning in his eyes. He spat blood onto the dirt, but this time he did not get back up. Jonas stood and returned to Miriam, lifting her back onto the horse. She clung to his shoulders, sobbing. "Jonas, I am scared." He placed his hand gently over hers. "I know, but I promise you, from this moment on, you never have to be afraid of him again." And under the burning red sky, Jonas rode away from the violent man lying helpless in the dust. The journey to protect Miriam was only just beginning. Jonas brought Miriam to the town of Ridgefall just as the sun dipped behind the hills. The blood-red glow of sunset stretched across dusty streets and low wooden rooftops. People paused and stared, eyes filled with surprise as they watched Jonas Hale help a battered woman down from his horse. Her body wrapped loosely in his oversized coat. The sheriff's office door swung open as Jonas pushed through. Sheriff Nolan Graves, a grizzled man with salt and pepper hair and lines carved deep into his face, stood up immediately at the sight of Miriam. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then his voice dropped, heavy as stone. "Dear God, who did this?" Miriam lowered her head, tears soaking the collar of Jonas's shirt. Jonas placed a hand on her back and answered for her. "Travis Carter." The sheriff clenched his fist so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Sit her down. Someone get Dr. Whitmore." Now that same day, the doctor arrived. The wounds along Miriam's thighs made the elderly man sigh deeply. Months of abuse and worse. This was not a jealous rage. This was torture. Deliberate. Sheriff Nolan nodded, his eyes dark with restrained fury. He turned to Jonas. "We will issue a temporary protection order today." Then he added, voice low but firm. "And I am opening a criminal investigation. Not a small one. This will be for aggravated domestic violence, unlawful detainment, physical abuse, and severe assault." Jonas nodded. Miriam trembled at the word assault, but Jonas gripped her hand. "It is all right. You are safe now." After Miriam was taken to a restroom, Judge Avery, a seasoned, fair-minded judge, walked in. He looked at Jonas, then at the medical report. "Jonas, this is going to be a major case for our town." Jonas replied, voice steady. "As long as Miriam is protected," Judge Avery glanced through the window at the room where Miriam had finally fallen asleep from exhaustion, "she will be protected, and she will have justice." Sheriff Nolan placed the protection order papers on the desk, stamping them with a loud thud that echoed through the office. He said, "As of this moment, Travis Carter is officially under investigation." Jonas squeezed his hand into a fist. As if gripping a blade freshly sharpened, Miriam had taken one step out of the darkness. But ahead lay a legal battle, haunting memories and the looming threat of Travis seeking revenge. Like a storm brewing on the horizon, standing under the golden light in the sheriff's office, Jonas looked at the door to the room where Miriam was sleeping. He told himself, "That poor girl. I will not let anyone hurt her again. Thank you for being here." And if this story reminded you of the old days of dusty evenings and hoofbeats echoing in your heart, then subscribe to my channel so each day we can sit down together, and I will tell you another story from the West. The early days at Jonas Hale's ranch passed slowly. Miriam was ordered by the doctor to get complete rest. But the wounds on her body were not the only thing causing her pain. At night, whenever the wind howled through the cracks in the door, she would flinch, her eyes snapping open as if hearing Travis's footsteps returning. Jonas understood. He kept her door open, placed an oil lamp out on the porch, and often sat in the living room, feet propped up on a chair, ready to be there if she woke in the middle of the night. One evening, Miriam stepped out onto the porch. The Kansas night wind was cold and dry, carrying the scent of earth and the sound of insects. She sat down on the step beside Jonas, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. They sat there for a long time without speaking. Then, in a voice so quiet it nearly blew away with the breeze, she said, "Jonas, do you want to know what it was like living in Travis's house?" Jonas did not ask. He simply replied, "Only if you want to tell me." Miriam took a deep breath,